Over 1,000 subscribers is no joke, but we all know I won't be a real YouTuber until I'm getting death threats and shilling for Crunchyroll.
I have ascended! Today's video was brought to you by Crunchyroll! I feel so big time. Get your 14-day free trial of Crunchyroll Premium at crunchyroll.com/explanation point, link in the description, where you can watch your favorite anime just hours after it airs in Japan. Anime like My Hero Academia, which features a superhuman society in which, as the main character says, all men are not created equal. This being a direct contradiction of the iconic quote from President Thomas Jefferson, the slave owner. The world of My Hero Academia does not pretend that every person is born with the same capacity for success, and the question of how to treat that inherent power disparity demands an answer. The usefulness and power of quirks varies widely, from Prince Zuko, but also with ice, to I have a clothespin for a head sometimes. And this difference in the utility of people's unique powers makes society face a fork in the road. Hiroaka has to ask, is it better to make every member of this society feel equal to every other member, or to emphasize these differences between people and let those with the most power excel? The answer it comes to is no secret. If you aren't aiming for the top in everything you do, you aren't worth it. But this answer is a lot more nuanced than it seems at first brush, and an examination of that answer and the attitudes behind it leads to a deeper understanding of this society whose conditions so closely mirror our own. Quirks make the differences between people more obvious, but the underlying principle remains the same in the real world. All men are not created equal. We are not all born with the same capacity for success in every field. The way that some people's brains are wired helps them to quickly learn languages or solve complex equations, while others are piano prodigies, or 7 feet tall, or blind, or they have that weird genetic thing that makes cilantro taste like dish soap. All of these being mostly uncontrollable biological circumstances that change a person's inherent abilities. Add on to that as people grow, they consciously obtain some skills and abandon others, causing the metaphorical power divide between them to grow even wider. Hiroaka's argument about how to treat these different people, which I'm going to call the elitist ideal, is that they are all suited for different tasks. They should then hone their skills in those tasks to be as sharp as they possibly can. People who are good at a task should perform that task, and people who aren't should defer to the ability of people who are whenever that task needs doing. And by encouraging interpersonal competition and aiming for the #1 spot, Hiroaka's world makes each of its members strive for personal perfection, which then creates this sort of toolbox society, one in which its members have all kinds of highly refined skills in a variety of different areas that it can use to face the struggles that we as a species have to face. Because the series is called My Hero Academia and not My Plumber Academia, there tends to be a focus on one particular profession in exploring this issue, but the principles remain largely the same. Heroes face certain challenges in their careers that require certain skills to overcome. The same is true for plumbers and teachers and butchers, etc. But because of the incredible visible impact on society at large that heroes have, their job serves as a good vehicle for discussing the benefits and detriments of this elitist system. To start off, why is the drive to be better than one's peers so heavily ingrained in Hiroaka's mentality? Well, Aizawa spells that out pretty well when he totally wrecks Best Girl Ochako in episode 5.
You've been taking standardized tests most of your lives, but you never got to use your quirks in physical exams before. The country's still trying to pretend we're all created equal by not letting those with the most power excel. It's not rational. One day the Ministry of Education will learn.
Twice.
You can't send one of us home! I mean, we just got here! Even if it wasn't the first day, that isn't fair!
Oh, and you think natural disasters are? Or power-hungry villains, Or catastrophic accidents that wipe out whole cities? No. The world is full of unfairness. It's a hero's job to try to combat that unfairness.
Aizawa might have all the compassion of a Republican bear trap, but he makes things pretty straightforward. The world's not fair. Pretending that everyone is born with the same abilities and the same capacity for success isn't just factually incorrect, it is itself unfair. When you throw a painter and a dancer and a chemist all in the same chemistry class, everybody's going to end up frustrated and nobody is going to wind up improving themselves as much as they could. Even if the painter and the dancer have no issues with chemistry at all, it's not what they like to do and it's not what they're skilled at doing. While the chemist is already at this baseline level of competence and now has to wait for the painter and the dancer to catch up before they can move on to stuff that they don't already know. Assuming that everyone has the same ability to learn every skill slows everyone down. The painter and the dancer don't learn to paint and dance, and the chemist doesn't learn to do chemistry, thus depriving society of all of their particular skills. Let people sail in the waters they know instead of drowning in the waters they don't. And Aizawa's depiction of heroism as a career whose purpose is to combat that unfairness only makes this more apparent. The world does not play fair, and in order to fight back against the challenges that it throws at you, you have to tip the scales in your favor as well. The way that UA decides to do this is to take the students who are most capable of learning the skills required to be good heroes and teach them as much as they can about heroism. The thought process being that if you take the students who have the most innate ability and then give them the best training, you will now have the best possible array of heroes to combat unfairness. A corollary of this is that most people just aren't fit to be heroes. Not one character in the series ever spits out that tired old adage that anyone can be a hero. In fact, everyone says the opposite. Heroism requires a particular set of skills, some innate and some learned, and if you can't fend off power-hungry villains and natural disasters and Endbringer attacks, then you don't have what it takes to stand with the likes of Miss Macrophilia and Captain Arbor Day. And more than that, it's irresponsible to try. All Might comments on a time when Aizawa expelled an entire class full of students who didn't meet his expectations, and while that's very harsh, the job of a hero requires the very best of the very best. If you're going up against a villain who can turn people into bloody mist with a thought and your power is, I have weird spikes on the side of my head, then I'm sorry. Your skill set is not sufficient to perform this task. And attempting to do a job for which you are insufficiently skilled means you get in the way, and all of society suffers. In the fight against the sludge villain, the heroes present realize that they aren't equipped to deal with this particular opponent. Trying would make things worse. Bakugo tries, and now everything's on fire. When Death Arms steps back from that situation and orders everyone else to do damage control while they wait for someone with the appropriate skills, that is an elitist order. It would be easy to fall into that optimistic shonen spirit and just say, "Ganbate, everybody, and we'll get there eventually," but that's not how the world works. In an elitist system like this, every member of society has to understand what they can and can't do, and they have to be able to do the same for every other member of society. You can't be arrogant like Bakugo and think that you can do anything just because you could kill your grade school classmates with a handshake. If an important task is beyond your skill set, find someone else who can do it. If you can do something that no one else can do, don't be modest about it. Help them, and if you can, teach them to do what you can do. I know that it sounds intuitively strange to say that elitism and arrogance are incompatible, but an elitist society as Hiroaka presents it is based on honest assessment of ability. Arrogance is, by definition, unearned. It's a view of one's own skill that surpasses the reality of that skill, which necessarily means you don't understand the limits of what you can do. Similarly, underplaying the difficulty or importance of roles outside your own is a kind of arrogance. All Might using his position as #1 hero to get a job at UA just so he can look for a successor for One for All shows immense disrespect to countless people who have devoted their lives to the study of pedagogy. The Flying Muscle has no ability as a teacher. Every time we see him in charge of Class 1A, the exercise is self-directed. He lets the students do their own thing instead of giving them any kind of real instruction. And when it comes time time to deliver the lesson to the class at the end of Deku and Bakugo's combat training exercise, he passes that responsibility off to a student who stuns him with her ability to teach. And when he tries to guide Bakugo down the path of the hero by giving him an inspiring speech, he just makes everything worse. But the thing about All Might is that he recognizes this failing in himself and tries to correct it so that he can effectively fill the role he's been given. In the second season, he actively seeks advice from Endeavor, a man who despises him, but who All Might still recognizes as a great mentor of heroes. And in the third season, he gets that adorable Teaching for Dummies book and starts actively coaching the next generation of heroes with some success. It would have been better for everyone if the role were filled by someone who knew what they were doing from the beginning, but All Might seeing that his skills are insufficient for this task and looking to correct that is still an excellent mentality to have in a society built on self-improvement. And yes, this honest evaluation of other societal roles is also not something that comes intuitively with the idea of elitism. The connotation of an elitist society is one in which a group of old white Russian men sit in the penthouse of a random skyscraper in Manhattan with no particular president's name on it, smoking cigars and laughing at the pathetic lives of everyone who isn't part of their aristocratic in-group. While the group of superheroes is flashy and powerful and exclusive, nearly every profession is treated similarly. When All Might tells Midoriya that he can't be a hero without a quirk, he doesn't just laugh at this quirkless nobody and tell him to go jump off a roof because his dreams are dead. He says, go do something else. Without that go do something else, the idea conveyed would be that, yeah, heroes are the best and you missed out. Sorry kid, you're worthless. And the implication of that is that there is a class of people who, based on the circumstances of their birth, are inherently better than everyone else in the world. And while that is certainly an angle you could explore when analyzing Hiroaka, it's not an idea that has any basis in the real world, and it's not one that I'm talking about today. Instead, All Might tells Midoriya to be a police officer, saying that it's a fine profession despite not being as flashy as heroism. Even if he doesn't have the ability to fight villains directly, and he does not, Midoriya can fill an important societal role. The same role filled by Tsukauchi, one of All Might's most respected colleagues. And if he doesn't have the mind for detective work or the courage for police work, he can still be a farmer or a construction worker or a lawyer or any number of other things. I have bad knees and an ailing back and my shoulders constantly scream at me, so I would be pretty terrible as an athlete or a soldier. But my wit, charm, analytic ability, consistent funnies, editing skills, good looks, personability, good looks, honey sweet voice, intelligence, shamelessness, and good looks make me an excellent YouTuber / Crunchyroll shill. Crunchyroll.com/explanation point, link in the description. Point is, even if you can't do the thing that you want to do, there is something that you are suited to do. You do have a place. You are important. Go find what you're meant to do and be the best at it. Not because there's any inherent worth in being better than everyone else in the world at your skill, but because the pursuit of that #1 spot will encourage you to constantly improve. But being the best at anything requires a certain kind of humility in and of itself. You can't just believe that you're the best and have that be the end of it. When someone is better than you at something, you have to recognize that, and you can't be ashamed of it. Before the sports festival, for example, Todoroki declares war on Midoriya and explicitly says, I am stronger than you. Deku is aiming for the top. He wants to be the best, but he doesn't take this as a slight. Todoroki is stronger than him. Period. That's fact. And he has to recognize that before he can learn from Todoroki. Remember that Midoriya's soliloquy in episode 1 does not end with the words, when I was 4 years old, I learned that some kids have more power than others. It ends with, but that won't hold me back. If anything, it pushes me to do better. Not being the best cannot be a source of shame in any elitist society that expects to function. Not admitting when someone is better than you means that you have no examples to learn from and no milestones against which to compare yourself. Likewise, recognizing that someone is not as good as you at something can't make you feel superior to that person overall. In a society that values self-improvement, it's vital that people feel comfortable acknowledging the things that they can't do so that they can begin to improve. When Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Mina come up to Momo to ask for help on the written part of the exam, that's them recognizing we aren't that good at this kind of thing thing, and you are. Help us. And sure, Momo could have gotten up on her gold-plated soapbox and said, "Ha ha ha ha, peons! You can't translate into the subjunctive mood. Ha ha, how quaint." But she doesn't. She tells her mom to clear the ballroom, and she breaks out the fancy teacups, and she helps. By sharing the skill that she has with others, Momo is raising the general ability of her class, which couldn't be done if the Three Stooges were worried about seeming stupid, or if Momo didn't recognize that she was in a position of authority, acting as an elite. Bakugo, as usual, is a counterexample to this. During the training camp, our loveliest, innocentest, rose-colored teddy bear comments on how good Bakugo is with a knife, to which he responds, "Or maybe you're just bad with a knife. Did you think about that? I'll slit your throat with this knife, you helium-filled moron. Why can't you just get good already? Jesus, Mineta's a better best girl than you." I'm sorry, sweetie, I didn't mean it. Don't cry. Not only is this bad skill assessment on Bakugo's part, since Ochako is actually very good with a knife as a result of her training with Gunhead, it's poisonous thinking in an elitist society. Turning ignorance into a sin makes people unwilling to seek help for fear of being perceived as dumb, and the elitist ideal that we've discussed requires people to admit the things they don't know. Bakugo suffers from this himself. During the combat training exercise, he's so afraid of not being the best that he doesn't even consider that Deku has certain abilities, one of which is being a very good strategist. Deku says himself that if everyone were performing the role they were most suited for, Baby Boom Boom would be defending the weapon and Run Fast Man would be trying to apprehend the hero team. And even though Bakugo wins his fight, his personal grudge against Deku and his unwillingness to acknowledge his opponent's strength costs his team the exercise, which means that Ida, who was doing everything right, suffers. Despite its highly individualistic nature, an elitist society is still a society, which means that the actions of an individual will always have some effect on the collective, which is why it's so important for the elite in a situation, no matter what that situation is, to recognize their position and act responsibly toward people who do not have their same abilities. Just as it's important for people who are not elites in any given situation to recognize that, and to defer authority to people who should have it without viewing their relative inferiority in this task in this moment as a source of shame. The last important thing to bring up here is that the roles presented in Hiroaka's version of an elitist society are not inflexible. In fact, the very idea of interpersonal competition requires that they change. A person who is an elite in one situation could be totally useless in another. Backdraft can fight fires with the best of them, but probably don't send him to save someone who's drowning. This changing of roles is what happens to Deku, the alleged counterexample that you've been writing in angry comments about since you paused the video 2 minutes in. At the beginning of the series, All Might tells Midoriya, "You can't become a hero without a quirk," and he's right. Midoriya's decision to rush into battle during the sludge villain fight should have done nothing but give the sludge villain another hostage to use against the heroes who were already having a pretty bad time, and there's no reason to expect his future heroing endeavors would have gone any better, especially considering how dead he would be. You might want to argue that Midoriya inspiring All Might by rushing in to save Bakugo means that his stepping out of line here was good for the situation because of the effect it had on All Might, but there are two problems with that. First, Midoriya's intention in performing the action that he did was only to save his friend, a goal that a team of seasoned superheroes couldn't accomplish, and an honest assessment of his own abilities should have told him that he could not accomplish it either. Second, remember that it was Midoriya's desperate pursuit of an unattainable goal that caused the second sludge villain attack in the first place. If he hadn't clung to All Might's pants, desperately begging him to say that there was any chance he could someday become a superhero, he wouldn't have dropped the sludge villain. He wouldn't have shortened his time limit by defeating it. Mirio Togata would be the next symbol of peace and everything would be fine. But argumentatively, that doesn't matter so much as what does happen. All Might, the elitist of the elite, recognizes that Midoriya has all of the skills that he needs to become a competent hero, bar one. So, understanding that he has that ability and that he can pass it on, he gives him that last skill. Upon receipt of a quirk, Midoriya's skill set changes. It doesn't run counter to the elitist ideal for him to try to be a superhero now because he can. It would would contradict the elitist ideal if he said he couldn't be a hero, because he can. This same kind of thing happens in the real world, though usually in reverse. If a professional piano player gets their hands cut off by some crazed hand-eating llama, they can't be a piano player anymore. Your skill set has changed. Go find some other valuable role to fill that doesn't require hands. Likewise, if you get banged in the head by a stray wrecking ball and the brain damage turns you into a master polyglot, congratulations! You can now be an interpreter at the United Nations. Or I mean, if you went to college and learned a bunch of languages or something, but that's not a fun example. The elitist ideal, as Hiroaka presents it, isn't some pretentious dictate from above telling people to know their place and not rise above their station. It's an acknowledgement that everyone has different skills, some of which are innate and some of which are learned. That some kids have more power than others. The people who are most skilled in performing a certain task should perform that task. The best governors should govern. The best teachers should teach. The best child skinners should probably not teach. But they could be butchers or tanners or something. None of these roles is inherently more important than any of the other roles, and someone who is an elite in one area could be totally ignorant in another, and that's fine. Members of an elitist society are required to objectively recognize their own skills, to perform the tasks that they can, and to ask for help when they need it. They must also strive for self-improvement, simultaneously competing against and learning from those who have more ability than they do, and in doing so, raising the skill floor of society at large. Hiroaka's brand of elitism is one in which the good for the individual does not come at the expense of the collective. Rather, it's the idea that individuals competing against each other in an effort to be the strongest they can be will, in turn, create a strong collective. So that instead of having 1,000 people fall all over each other trying to climb one path up one hill, you have 1,000 climbers showing each other 1,000 paths up 1,000 hills. And the hills are themselves. And the paths are their abilities. And this is a metaphor. Today's video is brought to you by Crunchyroll. God, advertising has never felt so empowering. Get 2 free weeks of Crunchyroll Premium by going to crunchyroll.com/explanation point, link in the description. Watch your favorite shows ad-free hours after they air in Japan and expertly subtitled by professional translators. From hit action series like Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan to feel-good dramedies like Fruits Basket and Attack on Titan, Crunchyroll Premium, specifically Crunchyroll Premium, the thing for which you are getting a 14-day free trial, and which is, I emphasize, loaded to the brim with desirable features that you do not get with regular old everyday Crunchyroll, provides even the most discerning of otaku with all the manga, dramas, and anime they could ever want, all in crisp 1080p HD. Crunchyroll Premium. Get your 14-day free trial today at crunchyroll.com/explanation point. Link in the description. Do it. Seriously though, I am thrilled to be working with you guys. The community owes you so much when it comes to the popularization of anime, and you do a pretty dang good job at what you do. Thanks for supporting me. And I couldn't have even gotten to the point where I'm shilling for Crunchyroll without you, all of you who watch, enjoy, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for supporting me over these last 2 years and a half, but I only have 25 videos. God, I need to get on that. Speaking of support, today's lucky patron is Daniel F. Roger. Daniel F. Roger. Daniel F. Roger, who's been around for a little over a year at the $1 tier. Thank you, Daniel, for your consistent support. You are a true elite. And if you want to fill the societal role of supporting my channel, go to patreon.com/explanation point, where you can join Daniel and Isaac and Alex and plenty of other people in making sure that I have the time and money to keep producing the content that you love, instead of laying homeless in some ditch ranting about that one episode of Oron to anyone who passes by. You know the one. Additionally, you can get access to the other 3 drafts that I wrote of this script, along with the around 35 pages of notes I took, 34 of which just didn't make it into the video. Happens every time. Join me next time for a hopefully much shorter discussion of Lost Song and how to make something so bad it's good. God, I love that stuff. Remember to do all the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, comment, notification bell, Patreon, Twitter, Crunchyroll. And until next time, folks, this has been Explanation Point, signing out.